Hello. My name is Farrell and welcome back or welcome to my channel. We talk about all things love, relationships, business, but in the actual realm of feminine energy and high-end manifestation, attracting what we desire into our lives without doing all of the hard work and the hustle. So today I wanted to get into a really important topic that all of my clients have brought me. I get this comment all the time. What to look for is a green flag, as a go ahead for if a man is going to be a provider or a good husband. So for me, your preference obviously does not have to be the same as mine, but as many of you are attracted to my channel, many of you also have the same preferences that I do. And that is that, the man that you intend to marry, are married to, whatever, is a provider. After being married for a little bit over a year and 3 months at this point, and talking to my husband with this is provider husband approved. So I wanted to bring you 4 traits, I guess you could say, 4 character traits, 4 things to look for, 4 green flags of if a man is going to be honestly a good husband, but in that also a provider. So what are these 4 things? Integrity, discipline, love, and prioritization. Of course, I'm sure there are other things that make men masculine, maybe in your eyes or in society's eyes or whatever. But most of the advice that I see about what are the green flags that we should be looking for in men, especially if they're going to be a provider, are really based on materialistic things. Now, obviously, it's important for a man to have like a job and money to provide for their family, obviously. But I'm not going to bring the super obvious things. I know that these are the absolute foundational, most important things. And my husband even looks for these things whenever he hires in his business, hires employees, or even takes on clients. So these are very, very important. And I don't personally believe without these that a relationship has a good foundation to thrive. And in general, without these, we're not even going to feel safe enough to be in that preferred state of feminine energy anyways with anyone that we are with. So starting with integrity. This, to me, is probably number 1 on this list. I don't recommend ever marrying a man or, dating for marriage with a man who's not integral. What does this mean? Obviously, this is a man of his word. This is a man who does what he says he's going to do, who you will feel safe with. Not safe because of this definition of masculine energy, right? Of course, truly masculine men are integral. They are. But I don't want you to look at this from the realm of I'm going to feel safe with him because he's in his masculine energy. What does that even mean? Honestly, what does that even mean? It sounds great. It's a great title for a YouTube video. I probably named this YouTube video something like that. But integrity is, or let's say without it, there will be no foundational safety in the relationship. There will be no trust that is really built in order for you to feel safe with this man and be in your feminine energy. Whenever we think about, the feminine needs to feel safe, and then they're like, okay, well, a man needs to be in his masculine energy in order for the feminine to be safe. What does that even mean, right? What I figured out is what this means is a man being integral. The fastest way, and if any men are watching this too, you're probably maybe having an aha moment or yes, I totally agree. The fastest way to lose a woman's trust and her feminine essence in the relationship is death by 1,000 cuts. This doesn't even have to be the big things, right? This doesn't have to be the lying about something big. You probably don't even think you're lying if this is a men watching, or these little actions that add up that are unintegral aren't usually big lies. But what this is that a man consistently shows up and does what he says he's going to do. So this can be little things like saying he's going to pick up something for you, or do something for you, or bring you something, or take you somewhere, anything, right? It can be day-to-day actions. Or he says he's going to stop doing this, or start doing something, waking up at a certain time, doing something in his business, doing something for you. When he does not do those things, and he consistently does not fulfill on that, and this becomes extremely important. It's an example. As many of you know, I'm going to have a baby very, very soon. But that comes even more important whenever you're setting an example for your future children. I know that obviously all this advice is probably not going to sound like the sexy, masculine, feminine, oh my God, he needs to show up like this. But this is the real. This is the raw. Like this is actually what you need in a relationship. So basically, integrity is going to create the foundational safety and trust in the relationship, right? Also, something that's very important that I've put together, and as my husband has obviously grown into more of his own integrity, right? Like marriage is a huge thing for women and men, and we get to transform within it. But he noticed that, and I noticed this as well, when a man is integral and does what he says he's going to do and builds that own trust with himself, right? Like this is not just for the relationship. This is for him building the trust with himself. He seeks less validation. And the reason I see this is so important is because a man who seeks validation through external sources. Now, obviously men's external, or like the masculine's external sources, are going to be different than the feminine's, right? It's usually not on their looks or whatever. It's going to be different. It's based on more of their accomplishments, or it's based on success, or, you know, the approval of other women or something like that. When men seek validation, this to me is, I don't want to say a red flag, but a sign of immaturity. I mean, of course, we're all going through it, right? But a sign of immaturity where he's going to take validation from the nearest source. And at the extremes of this, it could be another woman, or, you know, workaholism, where you're just in your business or in your job seeking validation through that. And this kind of goes into the honestly discipline and prioritization piece, but we'll get to that in a bit. But I find that very integral men, and my dad is one of the most integral men I know, so is my husband, they don't seek that validation. And this is something very nuanced that I don't think a lot of us notice, but our feminine essence, our feminine energy does not feel safe. Like we don't get to be in that preferential energy and really naturally go into it whenever our husband, our man, whoever is seeking validation. It inherently does not make us feel safe. And this is something that, yeah, I've never heard anyone say this before. I weirdly put it together and I was like, oh, that actually has a lot to do with it. But moving on to discipline. So discipline is really so important, especially for the masculine, the man, the husband. A man with discipline, this is not just like gets up and goes to the gym every day, or is disciplined in his business or his job. Yeah, of course. I mean, those are great things, right? But this is discipline on a level of not relying on motivation, not relying on there to be some like spark, or, oh, they have to go watch a motivating video in order to show up and provide for your family. Or they have to, have that motivation to go do the thing. I think this is actually a big epidemic, I guess you could say, in especially men more like my age, I guess you could say. I'm 27, but this is what I've noticed is that if you need or if a man needs motivation in order to get going, he will always be looking for that next little source to spark that. Versus a man with discipline is going to consistently, stay integral and show up for you, show up for your family, show up for himself, and keep working hard. Keep doing whatever it takes to get to the next goal. Continue to do it not based on his emotions. Motivation is very emotionally based. And so the man with discipline is going to do it no matter what. He's going to get up and do the thing, no matter if he feels like it or not. He's going to show up and be the leader, no matter if he feels like it or not. He's going to prioritize you and love you, even if, even in those moments where it feels hard, because that's a reality of being married, right? So discipline's very important. He's going to continue to provide, continue to do the hard things. It's not just when he feels like it. No, that is a red flag. To me, motivation is a red flag. Now, are there going to be moments of motivation? Of course, that's great. But discipline is what you really, really want to look for. Who's the man that shows up and does it anyways? Who's the man who is committed to his goal, to his purpose, and does it anyways? Who's the man that stays faithful and loyal in your relationship and prioritizes your trust, your comfort, your safety over instant gratification, right? Who's the man who has discipline over his own sexual energy? That is the green flag. That is the man that you want as your husband. And I'll go into how, all of these really line up with a man that's going to naturally be a provider anyways. He's naturally going to, because he shows up and does the hard things. Being integral is a hard thing to do. Being disciplined is a hard thing to do because they are not emotion-based. They're based off of continuing to show up for yourself, especially as a man. And in a world of very, very instant gratification at our fingertips, on social media, through dating apps, through video games, whatever, the man who chooses integrity and discipline over those other things is inherently going to be successful, right? And the men that have those sort of values, I have noticed, naturally have the value to also provide for a woman. I've never met a truly integral and disciplined man. Now, there can be fake, right? There can be the man who says that this is masculine energy and but you should be able to cheat on your wife or something like that. That's not discipline. That's not integral. I don't care if he is integral, or I don't care if he's disciplined or motivated or high achieving in his business. That's trash, right? So this is important because women focus so much on the provision, on the providing, and acting like that's such a hard thing to find. And I was talking to my dad about this too. And he's like, that's 5% of everything, right? Once you have the bills covered, and all that, obviously, we want more than just that. Most of us do. Maybe you don't, that's fine. But he's like, that's just the little part, right? Providing is so much more than that. And I don't say that providing is the absence of that and then everything else. Have your standards. I definitely would not, want to marry someone who's not providing financially for me. But that's just a little part. And I think that we become so hyper focused on that, and so does the content around this, that it kind of loses the plot. That's not what inherently matters the most. That to me is a natural emanation of these traits anyways. To me, I don't even separate those. It doesn't make sense to me that a man would be these things and then also not provide. It just doesn't even make sense. So I want to give these foundational things first, and then obviously, get what you want on top of that. So, love and prioritization. I'll separate these, but you can kind of put them together. So, love. I actually think, contrary to popular belief here in the feminine energy space, apparently, I think love is extremely important. I think love is, I could not marry without love. Absolutely not. That doesn't feel right to me. Now, am I saying, yes, marry for love and forget all the other traits that I mentioned? No, I don't think that's the right way to go about it at all. I personally could not feel safe enough to truly love, and I'm going to get into the differentiation of this in a minute anyways. I couldn't feel safe enough to really be in that if the man was not integral and disciplined anyways. And I think that becomes the big differentiator between love and lust. Like, what's the difference? Because obviously we're going to feel both at first, right? But love is very important, and not just the man loving you. I think it's absolutely very important that you, and I know you want to experience loving someone as well. Like, you are love. You are love, especially as a feminine being. And I don't think that a relationship without love is truly a recipe for anything good. So, deep love. I'm talking about like genuine spiritual connection. This is also a bit different than polarity. Polarity is an experience, like a preferred dynamic, the masculine, the feminine. Of course, it has to do with love as well. But when I talk about love, and I hate that this is so demonized, because it's like, okay, I feel like I'm one of the only people coming on here saying, yes, you should actually be in a relationship where you love someone. Crazy thought, huh? But, you can use whatever word you want here, but I believe it's God reflected in the relationship. Like that experience, that deep spiritual connection. And I think it's a huge recipe, or a huge ingredient to the recipe, for it to all work. And I know that personally, that is something I deeply crave to experience as a woman in her feminine energy. Of course I want to be loved. I don't just want things bought for me. Of course I want to love as well. That's something that I made this video a while back about how feminine energy kind of ruined my relationship. And when I say feminine energy, I mean these popular teachings, I guess you could say. True feminine energy, no, that's been a positive. That's been something that has been amazing to experience. But love, in the sense of true connection, like connection, let's just call it that, connection. That's extremely important. If you do not have that, to me, that's deeply unfulfilling as the feminine. And honestly, I've asked my husband as well, and he's like, yeah, that's all I want. Especially from me. Like, that's all he wants from me. He doesn't want me to provide for him. That's great that I help around the house. But as I'm 40 weeks pregnant now, actually, I can't do that as much, and he doesn't care, right? So he genuinely tells me, like, all I want is that connection and love. And when I was focused on these more how to get what you want feminine energy teachings, I felt that love was not something that I actually protected myself from it. I protected myself, not really protected myself, it was horrible, but I pushed it away. I severed the connection. I put other things above that because I thought I was supposed to be doing that, and that did not work out well. So, don't recommend. But yeah, like have standards, of course. And I think the difference between lust and love too is so important to really define here. because when we choose who we're going to marry, when we're dating for marriage, when we are, with someone, of course, if you were choosing lust first and just like how attracted you are to that person, I mean, we all know. We all know what lust is, right? That, of course, is not one of the most important ingredients to this recipe at all. But love is. And I know I'll be demonized for even saying this, but self-sacrificial love, to some degree, is required. And I don't say this to say, oh, you should cut off your other standards, don't worry about being provided for, any of that. Absolutely not. I'm saying that this is important, especially once you are in the marriage. It actually is. And also, to give more context, what I'm meaning when I say this in my head is probably different than how you're interpreting it. But that self-sacrificial love coming from both people is the prioritization, right? I don't truly believe that when we feel safe, as the masculine or the feminine, as the man or the woman, when we truly feel safe in the relationship, we don't go about things by how do I protect myself. That thought process is like very wounded, very wounded. What our deep actual desire is to experience pure connection without the walls up, without the self-protective mechanisms that block us from experiencing that love and connection. That's what our soul craves. Our soul does not crave, let me be selfish, put up these walls, even after I'm married, and just focus on, am I benefiting? Am I getting what I want? To me, that's a sign of immaturity. Now, I'm all about getting what you want. But now we have to get clear on what do we actually want. Is it what our self-protective, ego, human tendencies want? Which is to falsely make ourselves feel safe in this perception, this illusion of safety. I wrote something in my journal actually yesterday as I prepare for birth because, there's definitely some fear around that. And I've never done it before. So I'm definitely journaling about it and just getting all the stuff out that might come up for me. But I journaled about this on relationships too. And I just said, there's nothing less safe than resistance. There's nothing less safe than feeding into and playing into the fear. And to me, in relationships, this is really that fake feminine energy advice. The self-protective mechanisms that, oh, you should withhold love. You should, never fully give yourself to your husband. Like, obviously, this is not for men that you're just dating or, people that you're just kind of checking out to see if maybe you're interested in marrying them or anything like that. No, of course, guard yourself, like have boundaries for that. But when you're actually in the marriage, this advice does not play out well. What are you going to do? Keep playing games for 30, 40, hopefully many more years? No. That's a recipe for disaster. That's manipulation. That's not, and I don't say this to be like, oh, you're wrong, like morally wrong for doing this. I mean, if you want to do this and that makes you and your husband happy, go for it. But I don't believe that that's true. And so I know I'm kind of like ranting on this, but this has been a really big thing for me, a really big awakener for me, a really big learning lesson, especially being in the feminine energy space, is that it's being taught as, well, I don't know if I've said this in another video, and hopefully y'all like the more conversational tone of this video, but it's really being taught to women who have been hurt before, which most of us have. I have. That's why I was attracted to it. But yeah, I mean, it's being taught to women who have been hurt before, who resonate with the premise of needing to protect themselves in the future because they don't want to feel that hurt again. But to be honest, like, that is life. I'm always a big fan of learning from your experience, obviously, setting boundaries that make sense for you, raising your standards. And when I say that, what I really mean is, I have a whole video on it, so you can go watch it. I'll link it below. But raising your standards as in what you're willing to accept and walk away from, and not acting like a victim to your circumstances and just accepting the same thing over and over again. But for the women who don't believe that they have the power over that and over their lives, this feminine energy, these feminine energy teachings to protect yourself, and especially feeling like you have to protect yourself from your husband, like, I hope you don't feel that way, right? But that's very appealing to people who are wounded. That's very appealing to the unhealed, which is so many people. And what's really appealing about it too, and rejecting love, rejecting a relationship where your heart is actually open and you're willing to be hurt. This is so not popular, but I'm just going to say it anyways. But you're willing to, like, put yourself in the position to potentially be hurt over and over again. Like, you are also going to hurt someone else too, right? You're not perfect. I'm sure that I hurt my husband all the time, unintentionally, of course. And he does the same to me. I mean, not like all the time, but from time to time. But in order to come back to that connection, you have to have that openness to the connection instead of putting the walls up, instead of, going into self-protective mode. That's fight or flight. That's survival mode. That's where you're going to reject everything. That's where you're going to get into the cycle of rejecting love in general. And I know, like, let me just say for women in general, but especially for the feminine energy, that's going to feel like death. It's going to feel horrible. There's nothing worse, genuinely. Can you imagine feminine energy without love? That's what's being taught, and it's destructive. It's narcissism. It's disconnection from your own soul fulfillment, especially in relationship. And once you get into the marriage, or maybe you're already married, right? And you're probably like, oh, maybe something's clicking for you. That is the destruction of connection between a husband and wife. Completely. There's no growing together in that. There's no growing together in protective mechanisms. So, okay, after my ramble here, getting back into the love being something to actually look for in a husband, like as a green flag in a provider. The answer is not, this is the popular answer, right? I don't agree with it. Like, it's not wrong, but I don't agree with it. The popular answer is, when a man loves you and is obsessed with you, he'll do whatever you require and, like, he'll pay for you. That's great if you feel like that's the only way you can get provided for. To me, that's like survival mode provision. I don't like that. I don't feel that it's really embodied. Love is important because masculine energy is not, or like a masculine man is not a man who's disconnected from love. A truly masculine man is actually disconnected from or disciplined over lust, but deeply connected in love and actually deeply craves it. He wants to experience you as love, just as you want to experience yourself as love and the connection. And he's not afraid to know that and, dare say, admit that, right? That's something that he values in the relationship, in the marriage. That's something that, yes, he'll be in his purpose and focus on his purpose, but it's something that adds to driving his purpose, right? And so going into priorities here, a man who has his prioritization correct in marriage is one that does not prioritize. I'm trying to think of some things that currently we are seeing men prioritize over their wives, their families, their, the provision of their family, the well-being of their family. I would say, yeah, like looking at his priorities. It's not what he says they are. It's how he spends his time and what he does. His priorities, if they are instant gratification, if they are, if he prioritizes even working over the well-being of his family, if he prioritizes, and I want to say this in a way that doesn't contradict, like, of course, masculine men will be in their purpose. But if he prioritizes literally over the well-being of his wife or of, his family, working and avoiding and, into the workaholism space, that's not a good thing. If he prioritizes gaming, social media, corn, stuff like that, like, what is he doing? I see this trend. Nothing bothers me more than seeing this, and I see this more and more often. There's this trend on Instagram in specific, because that's the only place that somehow ropes me in and gets me to keep scrolling on these reels, where women are saying, oh, my man goes to the bathroom to go number 2 for like 40 minutes. He's on his phone the whole time, like all that. I show my husband this every time because it really, really, really bothers me. And he's just like, they are corn addicted. And I don't even mean like, I don't even want to get into this here, honestly. But just like social media, let's say instant gratification in general. A man who is just on his phone all the time, who is avoidant of presence, is not disciplined. And I find that trait really makes it hard for a man to be a provider if they were always in that space, that energy of instant gratification, which is social media, which is, video games, or how do I even get into this? Like, I could make a whole nother hour-long video on this, so I'm not going to go super into it, but I hate that trend because it's just a recipe for disaster, honestly. But prioritization, I mean, that's so important. You can definitely watch or see what a man actually prioritizes. And yes, you should be a priority. Absolutely. You should be a priority. If you don't feel that you are a priority and you are, witnessing this, which usually shows up in the fact that he's not integral to what he says he's going to do or anything like that, therefore not making you feel safe and knowing that you can trust him, then that's not going to be a man that prioritizes his family, prioritizes his values that he says he has. A man's priorities show his values. And so those are honestly the 4 things that I believe are genuinely the most important things to look for. A man who is integral, who is disciplined, who values love, maybe not that one so much in the provision thing, but who has his priorities in check, is going to be a provider at really any income level. At any income level. I know examples of men, or I know men like this, who make, $400,000 a year, but are stingy and don't view being, disciplined and integral and all of that as something that's important, and do not really provide for their family. Whereas, my dad was a firefighter growing up. I mean, he still is. But he didn't make crazy amounts of money. Obviously, I never went without or anything like that. But my mom stayed home. I was always provided for, always cared for. And he made it happen. Because honestly, he has all of these green flags. And now, thank God, I also prioritize that, I think, naturally in who I married. Also, I want to add this in because I don't want to make an entire video on this, so I'm glad that you're here if you stayed till the end. But so many women, like, the other question that I get asked the most is, where do I find a man like this? I'm going to give you the less popular answer as well. It's not going to be, okay, I don't know, it might be. I personally think that you can find men like this really anywhere, but I think because we're so focused on the money, the showy stuff, I don't even know. I don't even know what we're focused on now in the content, right? But I think that because people are focused on the wrong things, like how everything looks exteriorly, that this is why they're having a hard time finding them, because they're actually overlooking the men who are like this that are right in front of them. Because these men are not going to, I don't want to say they aren't going to be obvious. Sorry, I didn't script this part, so this might be all over the place, but it's going to be the real advice. Or the real suggestion. I don't know. I don't want to give advice here. Obviously, do what you want. But they're probably right in front of you. You just aren't even seeing them. Genuinely. They're probably already in your friend group, or maybe your friends know men like this who they can introduce you to. They're probably already right there. And so my actual advice on this is maybe you already have a friend who is like this. Maybe after hearing this, you're like, oh, that kind of sounds like so-and-so, and I never really thought of him before. I met my husband. This is like the third question that I get asked the most. Where did you meet your husband? We met in preschool. I don't know. We were dating in preschool, right? Obviously, that didn't go on for all those years, but we've known each other since preschool, and then we reconnected in college and like in between then as well. And so I watched him transform from obviously a boy into, a man with these characteristics. And I was like, oh, all these green flags are right here, right in front of me. And so the actual advice that I'm going to give you in this is that men like this are probably right here. They're probably right there, and you're probably overlooking it because you think that you should be looking for something else. So I really want you to, maybe journal on this, like think about this, meditate on it, pray on it, whatever you want to do. And think about, maybe you're dating for marriage, right? Are these characteristics that this person that I'm dating is exhibiting? Or have these been the foundational characteristics that I've been looking for in the men that I've, been looking to date for marriage? Is this what I've been trying to attract? Is this what I have been viewing as important? Do you view these things as important? Definitely think about it And all I can do is give my suggestions, of course. But I believe that men who exhibit these traits really do make the best husbands, and they make just the best providers in general. They're selfless, they're integral, they will make you feel safe. And you can actually connect in love with this rather than feeling like you have to stay in those protective mechanisms. So this has been a very long video, but very, very important. Yeah, so with that being said, any announcements that I do have a complete 2-hour masterclass that we did live back in May, and you can check it out for free. I have it linked below. Also, I will be starting my group program, Creatrix, where we can talk about, it's basically one-on-one coaching calls in a group coaching space, but it's all about manifesting in that high-end feminine lifestyle sort of manifesting, where you aren't just doing the one-off things, but you're just doing the complete transformation in your state of being and who you're being, which is so important for especially attracting a man like this into your life. And we're going to be doing that for 6 weeks together with 4 beautiful women who I'm really handpicking from this. So I'm being very particular, but if you're interested, definitely go below, message me on Instagram, send me an email, and we will be starting sometime in July. The date is going to be announced soon. But as of right now, it is on pre-launch pricing. So definitely check that out below. And if you're not already following me on Instagram, definitely go do that as well. FERALUXE, that's my username. So I'll see you there, and I'll also see you in the next video.